You are listening to the Prosperous Law Podcast. Learn how to reduce stress, have more time, and make more money. Come on in.
I'm Greg McCollum, and I built a 7-figure criminal defense law firm. I formed Prosperous Law to show criminal defense law firm owners who are desperate for success how to grow from under $200,000 to $1 million and beyond. Hi, Greg McCollum here with another edition of Prosperous Law Podcast. Thank you for joining me. I hope if you watch this or listen to this and you have a criminal defense law firm and you're looking to grow and have more free time and be more organized and have less stress and have a better life, I hope you get some value from this. That's what it's intended to do, is to give you a free platform so you can listen and hopefully get some value and learn some things and some lessons that I learned, many of which I learned the hard way and was able to implement. And so hopefully this will get you to where you can move into a better life, even if it is incrementally, and help you. Now, if you're ready to get serious about changing your life, at some point you should consider coaching, or I think you should think about considering coaching. And I have a coaching program called Prosperous Law. It's designed exclusively or primarily for people who have a criminal defense law firm or a criminal defense practice. Now, certainly a lot of people I've noticed have 3 practice areas. A lot of lawyers, solo lawyers, or lawyers maybe with one associate practice. It seems like criminal defense, family law, and personal injury law. It seems like every lawyer in America does personal injury because it's seen as a way to make potentially a lot of money and maybe get that big case. And so it seems like everybody does some of it. There are the people that are concentrate on it. They're really experts at it, and that's their big focus, and they do very well. And then it seems like a lot of criminal lawyers are in situations where I see people who first start practicing, they hang out their shingle and start to find their place and find their practice area. And it seems like that a lot of those people will do criminal law for a couple of reasons. One is that the cases that they're handling are not overly complex. Most all cases finish in some kind of plea agreement anyway, and it's cash in the door. So if you just opened a law office and you don't have any clients or any revenue, and somebody comes in and offers to pay you money up front, then that certainly it keeps the lights on. And so I see a lot of people do that. Some of the more successful lawyers I see that start moving away from that when other practice areas grow. And then what I also see is a lot of lawyers who do those 3 practice areas. They have personal injury, they have criminal defense, but then they also do family law. There seems to be almost an unlimited supply of family law cases. There's so many people out there need a family law attorney, a divorce lawyer to handle those kind of things, complex to simple issues, even just a no-fault divorce and that sort of thing. It seems like a lot of people do that. I know a lot of lawyers. There were 2 categories. I know lawyers that are extremely talented and successful family law attorneys, and that really is almost like a specialty to them, where that's really what they do and what they're good at, and that's all they do, and they do very well, and they do really good work for people. Then there's a number of people that I've certainly met and talked to, and they do family law for the revenue, but they don't like it. They hate it. They hate it, and they talk about how much they hate it. And so, but they're doing it. So part of the reason I've started Prosperous Law and coach people is for people that are only dabbling in personal injury because they think it's good money or easy money or too much money to leave on the table, and or they're doing family law and maybe 60-70% of their practice is family law, and they dislike it very much. They don't like doing the work. They don't like working with the clients. They don't like doing that kind of work. So the idea is that the reason they do that is because their criminal law side of their practice isn't successful. It doesn't do well. And a lot of lawyers are very passionate about criminal defense, and they feel the same way I do. And they really, if they had a choice, they would do criminal defense, but they don't do it exclusively because there's not enough money. There's not enough clients. They're not attracting enough clients. They're not able to collect the fees. That they take some money down and the client doesn't finish paying them. And so that's the work they do. So when they get in court, they're very happy to do the work. They're in their element. And that was me for really probably 2 decades, where a lot of the cases that I handled and got really good results on. And when I think back about a lot of the trials I had and cases where I won at trial, where someone was facing a major felony and we went to trial and I won, and I have those memories, and it's very pleasing, and I like being there and I like doing that. In a lot of those cases, I got paid very little. Some of those clients actually stiffed me, where they paid a little bit down and their lives were in such disarray that they weren't able to even finish paying. And so I wasn't going to dump them, and I went and tried their case, and we won, or we got some kind of great result mid-trial. And so the idea for Prosperity Law is there is a way to do criminal defense and make a living at it. If you're at a level where you're making $100,000 a year in criminal defense, you can go from 100 to 200 to 400 to 500. You can go over $1 million. You can go over $2 million in criminal defense. Now, depending on your market and where you live and work, you may have to branch out. In other words, you may have to have an office or two in a neighboring county or jurisdiction. So to get to $2 or $3 million doing criminal defense exclusively, it may require a geographic expansion. It all depends on where you live. But it's possible, and I'm living proof that it's possible. The first step is that you have to believe it. You have to understand that it is possible. And for decades, I didn't think it was possible. And because of that, because of my beliefs, it wasn't possible for me. Because I believed it wasn't possible, I didn't look for solutions and opportunities to make it possible and to create that type of law firm. So today's topic is about decisions and the 5 people you seek advice from. And that's extremely important, because what you decide to do or not do determines who you are and who you will become. And there's this concept that maybe you've heard it. I don't know exactly where it came from, but it's said that you will mirror the 5 people in your life that you spend the most time with. And so if you just think about that for a minute, who do you spend the most time with? Who are those 5 people? And they determine your status. And surprisingly, that will really determine your financial success and will determine how much money you make, because the people that you spend the most time with, if those people all make $1 million a year, over time, you'll make $1 million a year. And it seems crazy. If those people all make $50,000, $60,000 a year, and that's your circle, then you'll make $50,000 or $60,000 a year. And why is that? It's based on decisions and belief. And it's really interesting how the people around us influence us. It's really amazing how big of an effect they have on us. And it may seem like that's not true. And you can say, well, I know some really successful people, and they're not arrogant. They're caring people, and they have friends, who don't have anything. They don't have any money. They have friends with people they grew up with, and that sort of thing. Well, I know people like that too. I know people that are extremely successful, have had, multi-million dollar companies, and then they have friends that they hang out with, so to speak, and so that doesn't affect them. So there's that, but ultimately, who you hang out with determines who you're becoming, and why is that? If you think about it for a minute, and when I think about it, it doesn't happen to me as much as it did, mostly because of the people I spend the most time with. But is there anybody in your life who doesn't just give you advice? And if you think about it, if you're having a bad day or something happened and you're talking about a problem in your life, most people, certainly most of the people that I spent time with, certainly in the past, family members, friends, colleagues, anybody, what I've noticed is people just blurt out advice. You can be sitting there just talking about an issue that you had, and you're not even asking for advice. I remember my brother one time yelling at me because he had bought this house. It was old, and they were going to remodel it, and they were going to do something. And I remember I must have just been doing this at the time so incessantly, saying things like, well, what I would do, or if I were you, I would do this, or I would do this. If I were you, I would do this, and this would be good. And then he just blew up. And my brother's a very calm, measured person, but he had just had enough. And my brother Nate would just screamed at me and said, "Oh, really? That's what you would do, Greg? That's what you would do? Really?" And so when I look back at it, I'm really embarrassed that I couldn't keep my mouth shut, because he was trying to just explain what the issues were and what he was going to do. And I can't remember what it was, the driveway or the porch or something. But I was volunteering that. And that's what people do. Even though you're not seeking advice from them, they're talking about things and you're listening, and it's affecting you. It's affecting how you think. It's affecting what you think is possible. It's either opening up ideas and solutions and opportunities, or it's limiting them. Certainly where people have limiting beliefs, where they want to protect you. So all these people giving you advice, whether you ask for it or not, they're not bad people. Chances are they love you, or at least like you, and want what's best for you. They're your so-called friends. They're your trusted confidants. So we all seek guidance. Nobody is so confident and sure of themselves that they just wake up or look at a problem and think they have the answer. And also, when you're in the problem yourself, you always are going to have a blind spot. And so talking it out, psychology has proven that as you talk through something, your mind is engaged in it and is in an open kind of problem-solving method or process. And so that's very helpful to talk through things with people, and that's why we do it, and that feedback is invaluable. So since this is what we do, since this is what we all do, what information are we getting back? And if you look at what people are saying to you, then many times what they're doing is they're trying to protect you with good intentions. They're trying to stop you because they don't want you to, get hurt emotionally. They don't want you, to lose money, They don't want you to make a bad business decision or make a bad investment. They don't want you to so-called, get in something and get in over your head. So the key there is, how qualified are they to give you that information? And how do you know if they're qualified? And scaring you is a tactic. Using fear to stop you is a tactic, and it's something that our parents did. They would scare us so we wouldn't go do something dangerous or kill ourselves, and jump off a cliff, or dive in shallow water, or play with matches or whatever. So they scare us as a tactic, and fear is the thing that stops us. So when you're talking about, well, I want to do this, or I was thinking about growing my business, or I was thinking about adding a product line or something like that, and then they discourage you from doing it. They're trying to protect you. They're trying to help you. The issue, though, is that depending who they are, there's a strong likelihood or almost certainty that they don't know what they're talking about. If you're talking to somebody about investing in, say, a stock, for instance, and that person is Warren Buffett, or that's someone who's made, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the stock market, or if that's somebody that gets annual returns in the stock market of 20% a year or something like that, then that's the person that you should and I would listen to. But if that person hasn't done that, if that person doesn't have that skill, if that person doesn't have that knowledge base, and they don't have a track record, and they're simply telling you, well, I put some money in the stock market, I played in the stock market, and I lost it all, or I lost 80%, or the stock market is like gambling, so don't gamble your money away. That's somebody who had a bad experience, who doesn't really know and isn't qualified to give you the advice. And if you look around at your life, if you're like I was, you probably see I'm surrounded by these people, and I'm surrounded by their mindset, and it's almost impossible to change my mindset when all of the voices from people who care about me are trying to stop me and discourage me from trying anything. I know that if you're with somebody and you're talking to somebody who's done what you want to do, then that person, if they take the time and care about you, can help you and guide you. Because your life, and certainly your business and your law firm, is the product of the series of decisions that you make. And decision making, and I've said this in earlier podcasts, to grow and be successful, probably the single most important aspect of that is decision making. Because every decision you make takes you to a point, and then there's another fork in the road, and then you make another decision and another decision. And so you're either growing out in a successful way, and your life is improving, month after month based on those decisions, or you're making bad decisions, you're making terrible decisions, you're getting bad advice and going either sideways or the wrong way. I think that most people, because of our need to be safe, most people don't go backwards. I don't think most people, so fall off the deep end or whatever. It's most people just go sideways. And the reason they go sideways is because of the safety. We seek safety. I read somewhere that said that people do not want to succeed. They just want to not fail. And people don't want to succeed and stand out because it exposes them. If I'm successful and I'm doing really well and I'm thriving, I'm exposed because I've literally, quote, kind of left the herd. And there's like animal or biological science to this. There's an example where these people, these scientists, whatever people that study animals are called, I'm not sure what that is, were studying zebra behavior. And so they're out in Africa and they got their cameras and stuff set up. And so they're trying to study the zebras. And what they're doing is they want to study one zebra. And they can't keep their eye on the zebra because the zebra blends in with the herd. And that's how zebras survive, is by blending in with the herd. And a woman that works for me, who's an extraordinary person, when we talked about this, she talked about, like, I think it was, I don't know, before or after she went to college, she was in the United States Army. And I think she was in the Army for 4 years. And so she said what you wanted to do in the Army is you want to be in the middle. You want to be in the middle of your platoon. You don't want to be the terrific person, the rate buster. You don't want to be the extraordinary person that is standing out in all respects, because then the rest of the platoon resents you because you're making them look bad. You also don't want to be, the screw up and the flunky because you're dragging the platoon down, and so they get punished along with you or whatever happens. You thrive in the middle. You want to stay in the middle. And that was what was going on with the zebras, because the scientists got some paint or something and they painted like a red spot on the zebra so that they could watch that zebra and keep up with that zebra and study its behavior. And so they would know what they were doing, because they couldn't, with the zebra herd, they couldn't keep up with it, because the nature is that it blends in and you can't pick it out. So what they said is, after they painted the red spot on the zebra so they could study it, the lions killed it. Because now the lions, they can pick it out too, because when the lions are trying to kill and eat a zebra, they have to focus on one. They can't focus on 5. They can't chase 5. They've got to do however they hunt and however they seek their prey. They have to be able to concentrate on it. And because it had the red dot on it, the lions picked it out, stalked it, and killed it. And so the scientists figured out, which I guess is pretty obvious, that the safety is in not standing out, which is so people don't want to be successful because you might get killed. You might get eaten by a lion. You don't want to be exposed to people out there. You want to blend in. Do you want to be safe? That's what you want. And so it makes people very uncomfortable to leave the herd, because the herd is safety. And so it's one of the things that keeps us subconsciously from being successful, because deep down in our subconscious, we know that. Now, the other thing about being bad is most of us don't want to be bad. We don't want to be greedy. We don't want to be too rich because we have negative views about money. And so if you go back to what I was talking about and saying, well, your circle of friends, if you're going to grow and become better and become successful, you need a better circle. So if you think about that, and you're probably already thinking about it, how shallow and self-centered that is. Because how terrible a person do you have to be to consciously cultivate relationships with people who are successful so that you can be more successful. And how terrible of a person do you have to be to leave your friends behind? And there are so many examples of that where you find out somebody, say, is a rock star or a successful actress or a successful business person, and they've left the herd. They're no longer with the herd. They've think too highly of themselves. I think my grandmother said he had outgrown his raising, meaning how he was raised up and reared, that he had left the herd. So somebody that was successful, he's outgrown his raising. He's left the herd. And that wasn't a compliment to say that. That was an attack on the person's character and goodness or lack of goodness, that he had outgrown his raising. And so these things are all knocking around in your head and in your subconscious. And so you're trying to not fail, but you're consciously trying to not be successful because you want to stay in the herd. And the reason you want to stay in the herd and not be identified is because of safety, because you don't want to be exposed and be killed. And ultimately, all of the subconscious fears are there to keep us alive. And then all of the other fears that are planted into us that are not natural are there to keep us alive. So this is the reason that I didn't succeed. This is a lot of the reasons that I didn't understand that I needed to, quote, up-level my life. And it took me a long time to understand that that doesn't make me bad. Now, part of that, too, is the whole idea that, money is the root of all evil. And so people believe that. They believe that money is bad. Now, ironically, people admire people with money, but at the same time, they share that belief. There's a story that I saw on the internet, and it was about this humble couple who had millions of dollars, and they went in like dingy clothes, and the woman had like a faded house dress, and they wanted to give money to Harvard University like back in the 1900s, and they met with the president of Harvard and wanted to know about could they contribute money to build another building for Harvard. And the president of Harvard was arrogant and looked down on them and said, well, the buildings we have at Harvard cost us at the time $8 million, and so it's an extraordinary amount of money, and kind of insulted them and brushed them off. And then they went to California and founded Stanford University. So in other words, the haughty, arrogant Harvard professor looked down on them and their simplicity and lack of wealth, and did not know that they were multimillionaires that wanted to basically endow a school in honor of their son who had died, who had, in the story, he had gone to Harvard for a semester or something. Well, that story is in the newspaper or the magazine for Stanford University, where they talk about that and say that it's 100% fake news. It's 100% false. The story has been circulating, I think even before the internet, the story was circulating. The beauty of the story is these people are good. They don't flaunt their wealth. They want to give all of their money away. Now, according to Stanford University, those people that started Stanford, and it was a husband and wife, and their son had died, and they had gone to Harvard and met with the president of Harvard to get advice on how to start a university. And in the article, they talk about how the humble man was actually a former United States senator, and he had some wildly successful business in mining or something like that. And so there was a little bit of truth to it. But what we love about that story, and when I read the story, I was emotionally moved, like, oh yeah, these people are good. They just were going to do something good. They were not going to use the money for themselves. And then the guy at Harvard is so arrogant, and he's such an insensitive person who looks down on others. He lost out on that because he misjudged them. So the story worked for me. And I thought, I better look this up. And I looked it up and found out it was completely false. So the reason I talk about that is simply when I say you are the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with, those are your likely reactions. And those are things you have to think about. That doesn't mean you have to get rid of your family. That doesn't mean you can't talk to your friends you grew up with. But as you move forward and try to make sound decisions, who you get advice from is crucial and will determine what decision you ultimately make. All right, thank you for listening. I hope you got some value from this. I'll see you next time.
If you want to know more, go to prosperatlaw.com. We show criminal defense law firm owners how to reduce stress, have more free time, and make more money. Thanks for listening.